want to share with you some of the work I've been doing. Let me begin by giving you a context. If you recall, former Attorney General Eric Holder said that we as Americans are cowards when it comes to talking about race and racism. In addition, former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice said America was born with a birth defect. That birth defect being the enslavement of people acknowledging African descent as chattel, and using their forced labor to build the wealth of this country. We all know, with the number of police killings we've had over the past few years, and even researchers are finding that now white Americans are seeing racism as a big problem. Black Americans have kind of always seen it as a big problem. More and more awareness around race and racism is coming up. But all of this should be leading us to want to find a solution. So that's what I want to share with you today, what we've come up with in terms of ways to address racism and to ameliorate its negative impact. A few months ago, a group of people, Charleston, South Carolina residents, came to me after that horrible massacre of the parishioners at Mother Emanuel Church by a white gunman, and asked if there was any way I could be helpful in their project they called it the US Project, to really begin to address racism. I was happy and eager to do so because almost 40 years of my research has been devoted to the development of a theory of optimal psychology that really began in this way. As a graduate student, I was always concerned about the mindset of a people who could, for example, engage another group of human beings who looked exactly like themselves except for phenotypic differences, and determine that those people could be relegated to the status of chattel and be enslaved, kidnapped, and forced to do labor for them to build their wealth. That seemed crazy to me. What could they be thinking that was okay? Another example, how is it you can discover something fully utilized by other people, claim this land, in this instance, for yourself as your own, call the people whose land it was warlike, primitive, and savage if they try to get it back, and then write history about how wonderful, glorious, and powerful you are, having colonized, code word for steal, their land, and how warlike, primitive, and savage the native people are. It gets worse though, because over time, the people that you have oppressed begin to take on your narrative, your construction of reality, and they too begin to feel badly about who they are as enslaved Africans or colonized Native Americans, and begin to buy into a notion, we call it internalized racism or internalized oppression, that the superiority of the aggressor is truly that, a superiority. So my research then was really trying to figure out, first of all, what could people be thinking that they would engage in such bad behavior? And is that simply the nature of human nature? Because my colleagues and my professors at the time seemed to believe, oh, no, Linda, that's just the way human beings are. That's the way they function. But I knew, based on my own ancestral heritage and background, that wasn't true. There's another way of being in the world with which they seemingly were unfamiliar that didn't yield the same kinds of behaviors. So let me hurry this up because I don't want to take the 4 hours promised. What is going on? What is that mindset that would yield the enslavement of people as chattel, or yield less than the most moral, virtuous, just, and peaceful behaviors? And what I've reasoned is that to the extent people are socialized to believe that reality is what they can see, touch, taste, hear, or smell, and if they can't see it, touch it, taste it, hear it, or smell it, there may be a spiritual aspect, that aspect is separate from and secondary to the material, then you really kind of set people up for those kinds of behaviors. Because basically you cut them off from what would bring them a sense of security, peace, well-being, all those things we as human beings so desperately need. Basically you position them to be fearful, insecure, anxious, depressed, prone to addictions, prone to violence, and prone to racism. But not just racism, sexism, ageism, heightism, weightism, classism, elitism, all of those are derivatives from the same mindset. So, as the result of that analysis, I begin to think, okay, as I research my own ancestral heritage and cultural frame, how did my ancestors view the world? Well, they saw the world in such a way that they acknowledged the spiritual aspect of being, and they saw that aspect, if you want to call it energy, the totality, whatever the terminology is, consciousness. They saw that as permeating every aspect of human experience, not just human experience, but nature, the community, those who came before them, as well as those who came after. That holistic and integrated worldview really led them to a different way of seeing themselves and one another, a different way of interacting. So, as a result of my research, I developed a theory of optimal psychology. I won't take time now to go into the details of it. And also developed the Heart Feather educational services and curriculum that can be used online, offline, can be used directly in training. That Heart Feather curriculum is something that can help us get beyond the morass of racism. So, in light of that, I want to share how we can go forward. As I was explaining, the Charlestonians came to me, asked about developing a curriculum that they could use in their project. We call it the Heart Feather Project. And that project is based on my curriculum, but is designed to reach out to young people, designed to reach out to them through video games and through community programming that really can lead to increased self-knowledge, a better sense of relationship, a better sense of the multicultural experience, so that people can, and young children in particular, can see that each of us is of value, if not invaluable. And we can begin to develop the kind of social wisdom that allows us to bring peace and justice and sustainable well-being to not just this nation, but the entire planet. Thank you so very much for sharing this time with me.
And cut.